In the afterlife, everything turned out to be completely different. What awaited him on the other side of life was not the darkness of nothingness that atheists frighten us with, nor the blinding light of the gates of paradise described in the sacred books. The picture in front of him was shocking, and that's the mildest word that could describe what he saw. Everything he had heard during his lifetime about the afterlife turned out to be untrue. But it can be said unequivocally that what he saw shocked him to the depths of his soul. For more than 25 years, I have been responsible for putting the patient under anesthesia and providing resuscitation if something went wrong during the operation. Some patients died, others were saved. Often, those who returned to life after clinical death talked about traveling through a glowing tunnel accompanied by angels or deceased relatives. I've never believed in stories about getting out of my body and flying through the ceiling. Listening to such stories, I recommended that the patient consult a psychiatrist. As one of my professors at the medical university used to say, if you can't touch it, hear it, or see it, then it's the field of psychiatry. And I never believed that I would experience such an experience myself. Rajiv Parti wrote such a preface to his book, Dying to Wake Up. Rajiv was born in New Delhi, the capital of India, and worked hard to get out of poverty and fulfill his dream of becoming a doctor. After graduating from high school, he went to Germany and managed to enroll in medical school. In order to pay for his education and not starve to death, Rajiv worked hard. This largely left its mark on the character of the young man. Most of all, he valued material goods and vowed that he would achieve a secure life. After graduating from the institute and receiving an honors degree in anesthesiology and intensive care, Rajiv went to America, where he rapidly began to make a career, successfully married and became the father of 3 children. By his 50th birthday, reality had surpassed the wildest dreams he wanted to make come true. He got the position of chief anesthesiologist at Bakersfield City Hospital in Bakersfield, California, had a luxury house in a prestigious area and a whole garage of luxury cars. He could acquire almost all the material goods he wanted. This gave the party confidence in its invincibility. But soon everything changed. At the age of 51, he was diagnosed with a severe prostate infection. The operation that was performed soon led to complications, which caused him to suffer excruciating pain. He was prescribed strong painkillers, to which he soon became addicted. Soon Rajiv fell into severe depression. The treatment required several operations. During the final intervention, Rajiv himself experienced clinical death. It was only then that he became convinced from his own experience that the patient's stories about out-of-body travel were true. By the way, here's one such story. The patient on the operating table was dead. The heart stopped, the body was drained of blood, the lungs were not supplied with oxygen. In fact, the patient was not completely dead. He was in a state of suspended animation. Doctors stop the blood flow, cold fluid circulates in the patient's veins, body temperature drops to 10 degrees Celsius. All body functions are suspended. It looks like death, but it's not death. In this case, the surgical operation was supposed to prevent the rupture of the aorta. It's dangerous, but there's no other way out. If the patient does not die on the operating table, then his life expectancy will be the most normal. He is taking a deadly risk by opting for surgery, but if he does not do this, he will be doomed. The anesthesiologist is always present when the operated patient regains consciousness. It was then that he smiled slightly and said, "I saw you guys in the operating room. My soul parted from my body and floated under the ceiling. I saw you standing at the head of the table. I saw the surgeon patching my artery. I saw the nurse handing him shiny instruments." It became clear that he was watching the operation. He described the operating room very accurately. He talked about scalpels and scissors, and he described surgical procedures correctly. He wanted to keep talking, but anesthesiologist Rajiv Parti wasn't in the mood to listen to such nonsense. After prescribing a course of soothing injections, he left the intensive care unit. The doctor promised to visit the patient later, but in fact he was not going to do this and immediately went home. The next morning, the patient was transferred to another department. In the end, this story turned into another funny case from his medical practice. But for some reason, it was this ordinary incident that Rajiv remembered before the emergency operation, which caused his clinical death. And now let's move on to the main topic of this video. Dr. Rajiv Parti was admitted to UCLA Hospital just before Christmas 2010, where doctors were trying to fight a blood infection with powerful antibiotics. Sepsis was not treatable, so the next day Rajiv was scheduled for emergency surgery after a sharp rise in temperature. Constant pain tormented the patient. He was ready to die just to end these sufferings. The operation has begun. Suddenly he felt that consciousness had left his exhausted body. He went up to the ceiling and looked down at the operating team trying to resuscitate him. Doctors are generally considered to be the main cynics in matters of the afterlife. Long years of study and hard work in hospitals have taught them to consider all issues exclusively from the materialistic side. What happened to Rajiv at that time was completely outside the medical norm. How can he observe the process of resuscitation of his own body from the outside? Suddenly, the anesthesiologist's mind flashed with the certainty that he was the victim of a professional prank. Probably his colleague, the anesthesiologist, added something narcotic to the usual drug for anesthesia, which could put him into a state of delirium. But after thinking about it, Rajiv dismissed such speculation. Being a highly qualified professional in his field, he understood that such an outburst could end with dismissal or even prosecution for the joker. So it had to be admitted that his soul had indeed separated from his body. What happens now? In case of death, will he forever wander through an unknown world? If the resuscitation is successful, will he come back? Would they believe him if he started describing his near-death experiences? He himself would have laughed heartily at such a story quite recently. The doctors of the operating team will surely do the same. After all, they are all conditioned to believe only in what can be seen, and no surgeon has ever been able to see the soul during an operation. The direction of the party's thoughts suddenly changed. What does he care what other people think? It is much more important now to understand how his relatives will take the news of his death or insanity. Immediately, Rajiv saw in his mind's eye a small house in India, where the doctor's family still lived. He saw a living room where his mother and sister were talking quietly. They were going to cook lentil soup for lunch. It was time to start cooking because the whole family would be here soon. It was all so real that Parti forgot that he had been transported thousands of kilometers away only in a mental plane. He started talking to the women, but no one heard him. He tried to touch his sister, but his hand easily went through the girl's shoulder. She seemed like a ghost to him. But most likely, he was the ghost himself. The women went to the kitchen. Rajiv was about to follow them, but he heard the clink of instruments being carelessly thrown aside by the surgeon. Parti turned his head slightly, and immediately the picture of the surrounding world changed. The operating room appeared in front of him again. By changing the angle of view, Rajiv could simultaneously observe images that were located on different continents, but everything blurred and blurred. It was pitch dark. This gave the party confidence that his incredible journey was finally coming to an end. Now he will wake up on the operating table and will not tell anyone anything about what happened. But the joyful expectation of returning was replaced by horror when a dark thundercloud dotted with lightning appeared on the horizon. Thunderclaps rang out. The anesthesiologist ran away from the oncoming clouds and soon found himself at the edge of a huge sinkhole in the ground in which a fire was blazing. There was no way to get around it. The pit stretched to the horizon. Rajiv couldn't move back either. An elastic wall grew behind him, which threw him back towards the abyss. Parti had long forgotten the religion of his ancestors, but now the word Naraka came back to his mind. That's the name of the place in Hindi where sinners go to purify their souls in fire and pain and transform into a new personality. Dark entities scurried everywhere, and the screams and moans of suffering souls could be heard. Suddenly, the words sounded above the burning pit. You didn't love anyone. It was the truth. He wasn't worried about how his family was doing in India. He did not appreciate his wife's tender love and took it for granted, giving her nothing in return. He didn't even love his children, domineering over their lives and expecting only obedience from them. If Rajiv treated his loved ones that way, then it was hardly worth saying how indifferent he was to outsiders. He went over his head to achieve fame and success. He did not spare his patients, considering them only as a source of income, allowing them to lead a comfortable, habitual life. He showed ostentatious benevolence only to those people who could be useful to him in some way. The doctor recalled the faces of patients who expected to receive from him at least a drop of sympathy for the suffering they were suffering. But Rajiv was only performing official duties and was not going to delve into the mental problems of patients. Rajiv recalled his disgusted bewilderment when he witnessed the sincere grief of his colleague, who, along with his relatives, mourned the patient who died during surgery. The anesthesiologist was also in the operating room, but he did not feel the slightest sympathy for the patient's wife and children. He just wanted to finish his business as soon as possible and go home. Now, on the threshold of hell, Rajiv realized how poorly he had lived his life. Fear and powerlessness gripped him. He couldn't change anything in the past and must be punished for his callousness and cruelty. In the chaos of this place, Dr. Parti realized one more thing. His life on earth was materialistic and devoid of true meaning. When meeting new people, Dr. Parti asked himself the question, "What can I get from this person?" And then the man called out to the one whom he considered a fiction for the stupid all his life, "God, give me a chance to fix what I've done." Suddenly, a man appeared on the edge of the cliff, whom Parti recognized as his own father. He died more than 20 years ago and was violent and rude during his lifetime. His wife and children hated and feared him because he beat his loved ones for the slightest offense. But now my father looked much younger than the year he died, and his eyes shone with sincere love. He approached his son, silently took his hand and led him into a glowing tunnel that appeared over a fiery abyss. Along the long corridor, deceased relatives stood, who also blessed Rajiv without a single word on the way forward. As he walked through the tunnel, he saw his past incarnations. In one of his lives, in the 18th century, he was an Afghan peasant who grew poppies and became addicted to opium, which explained his current rapid addiction to narcotic drugs. In another life, he was a cruel prince in the Middle Ages, punishing poor peasants with a whip, which led to cruelty in real life. The tunnel suddenly turned into a large, bright room, in the middle of which an angel was waiting for the party. He announced that the request had been heard, and the man was allowed to return to earthly life. But he will have to abandon the idea of materialism and a career as an anesthesiologist. From now on, Rajiv must become a healer of souls, a psychiatrist. His specializations will be those mental illnesses from which he himself used to suffer: depression, drug addiction, unjustified cruelty to others. After that, the vision disappeared, and Rajiv flew swiftly over the endless green fields, returning to his dead body. He has known unconditional love, harmony, peace, and bliss. He felt the light as if it were a part of him, and at the same time something separate, as if the light were a clear, boundless ocean, and he was its small wave. Now he knew what his new life should be like. When Rajiv woke up in the operating room, his first wish was to fall to his knees and thank the heavens for this experience. Of course, he couldn't get out of bed. But 3 days later, he was already sent home. Dr. Parti immediately recovered from his drug addiction and gradually stopped taking antidepressants. Rajiv said that as a first-generation immigrant, he was passionate about success. Now he sold a huge house and bought one that was perfect for his family to live in. Now he drives not a sporty luxury Mercedes, but a simple Toyota. In the evenings, Rajiv no longer watches crime series and strives not for wealth, but for spiritual growth. The doctor has developed intuitive abilities. He has become a more compassionate and responsive person. He developed his own method of helping psychologically unhealthy people, which was called conscious healing. It's not entirely his invention. It was revealed to him by an angel. Despite the difficulties that faced Rajiv when changing his profession, he was determined to put this technique into practice. His mindset and lifestyle have changed beyond recognition. Along with his healing activities, Rajiv Parti travels around the country and makes public appearances, telling about what happened to him. Does it turn out that in order to become a better person and awaken from the shackles of materialism, you need to die a little? God doesn't send us to hell. We create it ourselves. By your deeds and deeds. By your thoughts, both in this incarnation and in previous ones. Do you think there is life after death? Write your opinion in the comments. If you want to learn more about life after death and the afterlife, then I recommend watching my other videos. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it. See you soon and have a nice day.